With integrity, we will get customers who have integrity. Integrity is the foundation from which everything is built on.
You better understand value. But at the end of the day, sales is a relationship business. It is a people business. It is an emotional business.
This is Sales Logic.
This is Sales Logic, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to close more deals. Mark, we got a powerhouse show today, don't we?
We do. We're doing something special. We're going to be replaying Mike Weinberg's Sales Logic Expert Exchange. In this, it's a session that he goes kind of one-on-two, shall we say, one with both of us, and he talks about what it takes to be a sales leader. He, of course, has written the book
New Sales Simplified.
New Sales Simplified and Sales Management Simplified and Sales Truth. Anyway.
You are in for a treat. Stay tuned. Listen to Mike Weinberg. Get a pen, get a piece of paper, get ready to type some notes on your computer because this is going to be one powerful show. And remember, we want to feature you right here on Sales Logic. Go to saleslogicpodcast.com, join the mastermind, put your questions in there. We're going to do everything we can to help you close more deals. Enjoy.
With us today, our expert, Mike Weinberg. Mike, welcome. Thank you. Hey, tell people if they don't know who you are.
My name is Mike Weinberg, and I love sales. And I love you, Mark Hunter. And this is an absolute treat to join you for this conversation. After all the hype and the promo and seeing all the comments, it's a treat to be here. And if you don't know me, nice to meet you. Glad you're here. And I'll tell you, I've got one passion in business, and it's helping sellers and sales teams win more new sales.
How did you get into sales? Like, really, what was your start?
I was totally against being in sales. I don't get asked this very often, so it's fun to have to come out and actually share this. I grew up in the home of a New York, sales manager and then sales executive. And I thought the last thing I want to do is be in sales. And after a couple of years suffering early in my career, I got a really neat opportunity to move out of New York and move to St. Louis and I was in consumer packaged goods to start. And I loved sales once I got into it. And I was mentored by some really neat executives that showed me sales is not that low level thing, the stereotypical, cheesy and authentic. It was about being a friend and a consultant and an advisor and, having the customer's best interest at heart and building a relationship. And the better you did that, the more assertive you could be because the customer or the prospect would trust you. And it just one thing led to another. And I ended up as a hunter and got pretty good at that. And the rest is history. But it was not my dream. I thought, I was going to be a business person. I just had the wrong view of sales. I had a very low stereotypical view of what it was. And now that I'm in it, I joke, this is the best job in the world. It's fun, freedom, financial reward. We're the people that drive the economy, right? And there's 1,000 things we could talk about in terms of why I love sales. So
what are you seeing happening out there?
It's been such an interesting few years. I'll tell you, one of the things I'm seeing is people are tired. Yeah. It's been the roller coaster of the 5 years since COVID started. And we're right at 5 years right now, really. We were in lockdown, hashtag WFH, early COVID 5 years ago.
That's so hard to believe.
It is really. And it's, that whole thing was an emotional roller coaster. I went back and looked at some of my posts and videos that I was putting out. Mark, you and I had an incredible conversation because you were bold and you went ahead with the book launch, right? Of A Mind for Sales.
Yeah. Well, it was your advice. You said, Mark, don't hold back. Let's go. Yeah.
There were, and the role a lot of us took to help people be positive and persevere instead of throwing pity parties and, panicking and all the things. And then we had the boom in the middle of COVID, right? Which drove a lot of business, which led to supply chain problems. And that was a sales mess. And that led to inflation and interest rates, which created the slowdown. I mean, I got tech clients that are still dragging and selling into headwinds. And it's just been, and then you take the US politics, which we don't do politics, but everyone's affected by it, regardless of who you're a fan or not a fan of. And it's just been really tiring. And you lay on top of that AI, and there's a lot we need to learn and see, right? This is the first time I've ever been pro tool. You know, I've been
Mm.
doing this for 15 years and I'm the guy making fun of people that chase the fad and don't go after it. And Mark, you and I together with some other friends, we spent a lot of time beating up the social selling knuckleheads, right? And the charlatans. But you know, AI is real, right? So there's things we're all learning about how to adopt and incorporate and get smarter and more efficient. So I guess all of that to say, Meredith, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a lot of tired people. And I'm also seeing people continue to stray away from the fundamentals where they forgot about discovery preceding presentation. They're feeling pressure. They forget about carving out more time on their calendar for creating opportunities at the top of the funnel because it's easy to default to service mode if you manage a book or a portfolio or a territory. So they forget to hunt. Um, we do demo first, ask questions later. You know, there's so many just basic fundamental things that seem, even though we teach them and all of us that teach this are all saying the same thing. It's amazing how many times I get into a company and I do some of my own diagnosis of what we're going to train on. And I'm amazed at the lack of conversation around the basics, even
You know,
prospecting. So
I think that is so true. I'm amazed that when I get into companies, I mean, really highly successful companies, you talk about the fundamentals and the basics. How many people are functioning without a process? Like, if you hired me tomorrow, they have no way to say, Meredith, here's the playbook. Here's exactly how you do it. And Mike, that leads me a little bit to your book on New Sales Simplified. Fantastic book. Kind of give the audience, any, the one or two out there that might not have read it, the kind of the premise of the book and where the thought and why you wrote about it. I love
yeah,
the fact that you have simplified in the title.
yeah, I'm happy to go through it. You know, that the genesis of it. And the longer I do it, the more simpler I teach it. In fact, when I teach workshops today, I even teach it simpler than I wrote it 12 years ago because I've learned more. But I want to address something. You said something really prescient a minute ago before you asked about the book, and it was about the playbook thing. And I just
Yeah.
want to tell you a story because it fits in with exactly what you and Mark were discussing. I worked with a really big tech company last year that has a tremendous brand and had a very long run of success because they were hot and they sold something really cool and there was a lot of inbound leads and there was just a lot of fulfilling of demand and good sales work going on, but a lot of people in sales roles didn't need to create new opportunities. And I actually got brought in not for sales but for sales management effectiveness help, and we got managers doing a lot better job, and their business has been tough because of the economy and the
Sure.
cutback in tech spending, and a lot of early COVID drove people to tech and more spending there that since has evaporated. But one of the things they uncovered, which was rather scary, honestly, was because we were doing better sales management, aka accountability and exposing weakness and lame pipelines and people that weren't tracking towards their MRR goal, et cetera. It exposed the fact that a lot of sellers didn't have a process. And when it came time for the managers to coach them on the process, it kind of exposed this vacuum that the company really had never codified some serious sales process for creating demand, only about what to do when you had demand and you were chasing leads. And it led to this entire initiative to kind of create a sales playbook. And I mean, this is a company you've heard the name of, right? And it's a scary thought to me that we've got people that whose success is dependent on whether they have a manager at the time who can
Yeah.
coach them on their own, but that the company didn't provide a playbook or a plan or the type of training that all of us had when we were young in sales. And right when we learned by someone mentoring us and there being an official program. So you triggered me to share that when you mentioned not seeing playbooks because there's just a lot of assuming going on at
Yes.
both the sales and the management level.
This whole thing on process, I think as we get into more kind of unstable, uncharted territory, process becomes more important. But you mentioned something about AI and the fundamentals. Is that on a collision course?
Well, I don't know. I'm probably not the smartest guy to address that. Um, in some ways, I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm naive or optimistic that it's forcing leaders and sellers to go back and do the homework and the prep. Because if you really use AI right, you're preparing a lot better for sales calls. You're doing research on prospects. You're doing pre-discovery. You're coming up with compelling talking points to your message wrapped around the challenges your customers are facing or their desired outcomes, right? You're even potentially prepping through better discovery questions. You could be a lot more educated on the fundamentals and the basics. But Mark, I'm sure like everything else we've seen over the 12 or so years you and I have been friends, people will use it as a shortcut and they'll copy and paste and they're cheat sheeting it, looking for the easy button, draft me an email, draft me an email. They're copying and pasting and putting it in. And, one of my friends and I were talking about the reality where AI detectors pretty soon will be attached to mail programs. And, that's going to just another reason email's not effective anymore. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm the best guy to answer the question, but I'm curious for your take, when you talk about AI and fundamentals.
Well, I mean, you kind of question, is AI just the next level of Google search, which it is? Is that the next level of 35 years ago, people are 25 years ago, oh, email, you can't sell by way of email. Now that's become the
Right.
norm. And do AI tools become the norm? And yet we still embrace the fundamentals because I think relationships are more important than ever. And I know you talk about that a lot, how important relationships are.
Yeah, it's relationships and fundamentals. This goes back to Meredith's question, where did New Sales Simplified come from? It was just the stuff I was doing as a successful sales hunter that I wrote down along the way. And I had a job in consulting before I went out and launched on my own, where I, for the first time, was forced to teach the basics of hunting. And it was really a powerful and painful exercise of having to take what I did instinctively and then I learned over, probably 15 years being a really good hunter and have to put it down on paper and then convert it into something that was teachable. And I wasn't necessarily looking to do a book. I got contacted. It was the summer of 2011, and there must have been a shortage of sales books, honestly, because a couple publishers found me from my not that great LinkedIn presence and doing some blogging when blogging was big. And both said, you can write, you should have a book. So I did a proposal, and one publisher laughed at me, truly laughed at me, and one offered me a few cents as a advance, and said, "I'll help you with this book. Let's go." And same publisher Mark worked with the first time, and we had a lot of good experiences there. But the book is basically it's about removing the mystery of what is new business development. Because in my exposure, this is before the book came out, and then obviously I've had a lot more exposure in the 13 years since in a lot of companies. And I'm still amused. And I'm not trying to be like falsely humble or funny, or self-deprecating. I am amused at the response to that book because it's basically grade school level sales coaching. And anyone who's old enough who sold before the world got turned upside down with crazy social selling and inbound marketing, it's the stuff we all did. And sometimes I joke now, it's the 5 keys to winning new business. You got to have a target list. You got to have strong, compelling messaging. You have to be able to get a meeting. That's prospecting. Some companies I call that proactive pursuit, so they don't freak out about the word prospecting. But you have to be able to get a meeting, and then you get the meeting, and you have to have a conversation, a consultative discovery dialogue, which is a rare thing these days. And then if you could present with some power, and then you have to own your calendar and your pipeline, and that's all I teach. And I keep waiting to get called into some massive company where the sales challenges are so complex that working on targeting, messaging, prospecting, good discovery, and presenting, and owning the calendar pipeline doesn't create sales lift, and it hasn't happened yet. And Mark, I can see your face is so fun. Like you know where I'm going with this. Like it's everybody wants to make it so hard, and I get that the businesses are complicated, but the act of developing new business isn't. And that was the genesis of New Sales Simplified. And fortunately, the publisher was cool with me using that title. And it's the book's title is what it does. And the rest is history. Just kind of it's got a life of its own at this point. So
Yeah, it's funny. If I had a dime for every time I get asked in a keynote, if you could just give us the magic bullet, and I always say, there's no magic bullet. So I'm going to answer this question. I think they are not on. I don't think AI and the fundamentals are on a collision course. I think they're on a collaboration course. And I think, one of my favorite sales books to tell everybody to read is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, written in the 1930s.
doesn't get much better, right? Than that.
Does not
No,
get
no,
much better. It
no.
doesn't get much better than that. But if you really read that book, you see a dying art, and that is the art of conversation, the art of investing in people, and I think AI will make those skills more valuable than they have ever been.
I like your take on that.
If you stop and think about it, everybody chases the shiny object. This is why we screwed up sales. I mean, social selling, we all run those, and you're right. You and I bashed more than a few people in that back in our day. And everybody chases the shiny object, not realizing sales is not complicated. It's not complicated. How do we get ourselves away from those shiny objects? What are you telling people?
I put up a slide when I'm doing a sales management workshop, and I run through the common sales leadership sins, and the way I say it, they damage culture and diminish results. And the last one I always show up is someone rubbing a magic genie, a lantern, trying to get the genie to come out. And I'm like, and I just look at them and I say, I'm sorry, stop it. Stop it. There is no shortcut. All these, sales tool vendors, unfortunately, that's slowed down a little bit the last year or two from what it was a few years back. But all these venture-backed sales tool vendors that have the perfect fix for all that ails your sales team. We have the plugin, we have the cadence, we have the thing. Now it's some people I've had to stop following a handful of people in our own industry on LinkedIn because I can't stand to watch them putting out the same thing every day about their brilliant take on AI and what's going on there. It's like enough already. It's just it's overkill. So I don't know, Mark. I would say it's the need to go back to what we know works and the fundamentals. But we have this natural passion to chase what's easy, and some of it comes at the sales management level, where that's where I was going initially. They're under so much pressure, and so many sales managers I work with work for companies where the people in the corner office or the C-suite have completely lost sight of what the frontline sales manager is supposed to do to drive the business forward. And particularly post-COVID, where now we just drag people to virtual meeting after virtual meeting after virtual meeting. And the typical sales manager gets 134 emails a day and clean up an aisle 4, send the sales manager. That the sales manager's under such pressure, they're so desperate. They're the ones out there looking for the quick fix or the easy button because they never get time to do the things I argue move the needle, which is coaching and accountability, job 1 and 1A in sales management. So I'll yield because I could go on forever on that, but it's everyone wants the quick fix. And it's the longer I do this, the less I teach. I'm teaching less content when I do workshops and trainings and just trying to get it down to the few brass tacks things that if you just do this, we're going to get sales lift.
Yeah. Mike, we've had a great question come in that I want to ask you in a second,
Sure.
but I want to make a comment on that. And that is that for anybody listening who isn't hitting their sales nut or isn't, or is leading a sales team, I think one of the biggest things missing in the market today is the fact that I don't care what you're being told to do. Your job is to critically think through what moves the needle and get in minor trouble for not doing what you're told, winning the war by doing what moves the needle. In sales, if you grow the business, nobody cares that you didn't sell what was in the campaign. And that's the biggest thing I get. People are like, well, I don't have time to do this. I'm like, well, if you didn't show up for a meeting and you went on 6 sales calls, guess what? When you blow your sales call out at the end of the month, nobody's really going to get you in trouble for that. So that's just sort of my soapbox on that. But here's the question. If you don't have a documented sales process or a playbook, where do you start?
Wow. I think that's a loaded question. It's a hard one. Are you asking me intuitively if you need if
So
you're talking to an individual seller, they need
talking to an individual seller.
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to answer that. But I think you just also titled your next book, right? Move the needle, exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Like ignore the other stuff and work on the things by Meredith. I think you have I think you have something there. So
yeah.
If somebody truly was going to put a gun to my head and threaten me and say, what do I do to get more new sales? And I'd say, okay, the first thing you're gonna do is we're going to pick our targets. We're going to get really strategic about whose business we want. And I need to do that first, even if I don't have the playbook written yet, because the story I'm going to write and the methodology and the plays that I'm going to draft are going to be focused around how do I get the attention of, get in front of, and then find pain and opportunity in those accounts that are on my list. So even if, and this happens, I get called in some small companies where there is no marketing or there is no strategy or playbook. So we need to know whose business we want, who we're going after. But very quickly next, the most important play, it's particularly if there's no playbook, is what is your sales story, as I like to call it, your pitch, your value prop. It's the collection of talking points when the people are selling. And the way I unpack that is you need this entire collection of these talking points that I would argue need to be customer issue and customer outcome focused. What are the issues we address? In other words, problem solve, pains removed, opportunities captures, and then outcomes achieved. What are the, Mark, I hear you talk all the time when I watch your videos or you're on LinkedIn. You're always preaching outcome, outcome, outcome. When you're talking prospecting, I'm 100% aligned with him on that. And we need talking points that get at those. But the prerequisite to that is understanding who we're targeting, because we have to know what the challenges of the persona, the person in the role that we're targeting with our solution, right? So I can't sell. If I can't sell or draft a story if I don't know what's going on in the world of the person I'm pursuing. And yes, I'm not saying we don't do discovery when we get in the conversation and we try to find out their specific challenges and pains. But prior to that, when we're trying to develop new business, there are many times where we need to message first. Notice I'm not saying present first or propose first, but message first. When you're prospecting, and our friend Anthony says this, you're trading time for value. Well, then you need to be able to articulate the value. What's in it for the prospect? What problems do you solve? What results do you achieve? You share those in a conversational, articulate way. And if you can also share why you're better and different, that's wonderful. But that's the most important play in the playbook, is what's the story? Because if you have a great story, you're more confident, you justify your price, you don't get as commoditized, you get the prospect's attention, you're more likely to sell them on the meeting and giving you their time, and then promising them in exchange they're going to get value for the time we spend together. I've been using that line since I've been teaching sales, right? I mean, my favorite prospecting line is visit with me anyway. I don't care if you're happy. I don't care if you're under contract. Visit with me. You're going to get a ton of value from the time we spend together, even if I'm not a fit right now, or there's no next step for me. Like, but you got to have something to say that intrigues them. That's about what's on their mind, not my company history, my product, my people, our engineering process. I'm so freaking tired of self-focused sales story that's about the company's founder and how smart he or she was and how many locations they have. And these are the 17 companies we acquired. And I've worked here this long. And this is our model. Like self-focused, blah, 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 blah. And it may be a point at some point, but the playbook, the story that we got to lead with is what's on the mind of the customer and how are we going to help them? All right, sorry, I got a little wound up there, but
Right.
No,
I couldn't stop myself, Mark.
I'm glad you did that because I just, yeah, there's no room for the capabilities presentation, and I was gonna
Say it again, Mark. Say it again for the
there's
people in
no
the back.
room for the capabilities presentation. The 80s are calling. They want that back, right? I mean, how many times have you and I sat on the other end of a desk and seen a salesperson come in and here's a picture of our building, here's a picture of our factory. Who really cares? So I'm glad that's not the sales story. That's not the sales story. You also said something very key. And again, it comes back to knowing who your customer is. You got to identify that before you begin creating your sales story. So many times people think they just, well, let me come up with this pseudo value proposition, then we'll go out and see who wants it. No, that doesn't work.
It's very scary. But in tech, that's how a lot of those companies were built.
Yes.
Really smart people came up with ideas, and they wanted the salespeople that oftentimes in tech they don't have a ton of respect for. Go out and sell my brilliance. I created this great solution. Go sell it. And there's no connection to the world of the prospect and what's in it for them or why does it matter. And it's a huge mess right there. So
it's because what they've come up with is a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. Just because
100%.
you've got funding for your product doesn't mean the marketplace is looking for it. Anyway, we could go down that side path
100 times. That's right.
But I want to come back to, where does this whole discovery call process lie? Because I know you got some really strong theories on that, some really strong philosophies. Share that.
Yeah, I'll share a couple thoughts, and it's even now evolving. Here's the biggest problem I think that salespeople face. I hate to say the biggest. One of the biggest problems is that while it's not their fault, it is their problem. The water's been poisoned.
Oh, that's a drop. That's a drop, Mike. Will you?
Yeah,
Mike,
I said it.
Don't
I use
drop,
this.
Mike. That's a mic drop.
It's a mic drop, and you could drop me too if you need to. Other salespeople have wrecked it for the good ones, is what I'm saying. So it might not be your fault, professional seller, but it is your problem because the water's been poisoned by other salespeople that were manipulative or wasted people's time or did spray and pray, show up and throw up, where they were presenting, bringing no value. But on the other side of the equation is the salesperson that's been overtrained, maybe by some franchisee organization, just saying, to do nothing but discovery, annoying, over the top, discovery that never ends and it's painful. And after a certain amount of time, the prospect is like, what the hell is this? I feel like I'm getting stripped down at a doctor's office. Like, get away from me. Like, stop with the questions and actually offer me something in return for this conversation. I believe in mutuality, right? Like we're having a conversation, there's an exchange of value. So it's neither, Mark, this is, we'll go down this path together. It's neither spray and pray, show up and throw up, go give them everything from the capabilities overview to even some sexy presentation on the front end, because that's malpractice if you haven't done good discovery. But at the same time, discovery all by itself is not necessarily enough. Now, if you're asking really good consultative questions and acting like a consultant, and Neil Rackham, when he was promoting the Challenger sale 100 years ago, and he got in bed with those guys, one of the questions he challenged sales managers with was, are your people conducting the type of sales calls that they're bringing so much value in the sales call that when the meeting was over, the prospect would write you a check just for the value of the sales call, for the conversation? I thought that was a really good aspirational thought that Neil Rackham, the father of our movement, right, so threw out there. So we can bring a lot of value by asking good questions and getting people to think and moving them off center and maybe showing them they have challenges or that they don't know about. But I feel like the other part of that equation is we better share some valuable ideas and potential ways we can help people, or be in a position to at least share success stories, case studies, where someone's going to leave that meeting. Oh, that was useful. So I'll pause there because I threw a lot out there, but it's neither extreme. I still think even if it's an early stage discovery meeting, there's give and take there.
What do you think about the fact that, I was listening to a podcast this week while I was driving, and they're really talking about the fact that when you go into sales, you really have to have a clean intention all the way through to believe I am truly here to help other people. And from that, the sale just comes. Where do you strike the balance with this, altruistic, heartfelt, I want to help people, and I'm going to get fired if I don't hit my sales goals?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think, and honestly, the three of us, if we named the 5 best salespeople on our minds right now from our clients and people we work with, I guarantee you 100% of them balance that very well. They are completely customer issue and outcome focused. They are in it. I'm gonna quote a guy that was on my podcast twice, a guy named Drew Ellis, who works at SAP. And I said, when did you become a sales rock star? That was the question I asked him. And he took his 2 fingers and he went like this. And he said, when I learned how to become thick as thieves with my best accounts. And I said, Drew, I don't know what that means. Unpack that. And he said, I got to the place with those customers where they knew that I put their best interest above my own. And once I got there, I could do anything with them. Okay, so there's one example. I talked to a young woman named Hannah it'll become my single most popular podcast episode. I interviewed her like 2 months ago. She attended a workshop I did a year ago and made a few tweaks. This is what's so interesting, not radical stuff, a few tweaks on her mindset, realizing that sales is noble. And it gave her permission to be more assertive with her prospects and to act more like a doctor with a sick patient. And those are the 2 things that she shared when I interviewed her. And it produced this breakthrough result. So my answer, while circular, Meredith, to what you're asking, is circular and winding. The best sellers I see manage that very well. They have the customer's best interest at heart. My dad told me when I went into sales 32 years ago, he's like, Mike, you don't get this, but as long as your goal in sales is to help the customer win, you're always going to win. So that means you do everything with integrity and with their best interest at heart. But it's also the way when I teach this is it's permission to hit hard. So when I'm prospecting, I don't take no for an answer, not because I'm a pest or a nuisance, or why do I call someone for the 19th time? Because I'm convinced they're better off with me than with somebody else. So I'm going to follow up because I don't see myself as a nuisance or a pest. I see myself as a rescuer. So right there is one where that mentality plays out. But even later in the sales cycle, you're asking harder questions and you're being honest, and you might even back away when you realize I'm not the right fit for them. They could do better somewhere else, or we don't have the solution that's going to meet what they really need. And I think those are the people that are the rock stars.
Mike, I love the fact that you use the word integrity and then you push, because again, people know, well, if you integrity, that means you back off. No. If you know that you can rescue them, that was your word. I love that. I love that. we have
Yep.
an obligation to be reaching out to them. Yeah.
Mark, I love that you pulled that out of that statement because I agree. Like it's not or, it's and. You can
Yes.
have integrity and be, like Drew said, thick as thieves. And as Hannah said, sales is noble. I'm the doctor. I'm there to help them. That's my motivation. But on the other side, because I care, I'm going to hit harder. I'm going to
Mhm.
push harder for the meeting, and I'll do the challenger thing deeper when I'm in the sales process because I am going to act as a consultant who has their best interest at heart. So I'm not going to be a wuss. Similarly, and Mark, you know how I feel about procurement weenies. And if there's any of you listening, my mission is to put you out. Like there, that's why you have to get as close as possible when we're selling. We as sellers have to get as close as possible to the real business people in the customer organization so that we can neutralize the procurement weenies that are trying to level the playing field and take all the fun and creativity and differentiation and margin out because they don't care whether we're solving a business issue. They're just looking to take your last nickel and do their job and give you some onerous 77-page master services agreement. And the executive wants help with solving a problem or achieving an outcome. So it all ties together with everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I always say to people, if I called you and said I was coming to your town, could you recommend someplace that I could go to eat? You would get so passionate. You'd be like, you've got to eat at this place. Give them my name. I mean,
Yes, I would.
and you wouldn't care you really wouldn't care if I didn't go there, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but you would just be voluminous with information to help me because you cared that I had a good experience in your town. That's how you have to approach sales. You have to believe so much in your product and the solution, more the solution you can provide, that you're just passionate about helping people with you. And that's where the quote unquote push comes. It comes out of kindness.
100%. This is the opposite of the pushy, I'll use the
Right.
stereotypical used car salesman. The push you're describing is the push because I care and I want the best for you. So I'm going to push you because I believe it. And I've told people this to my clients. If you don't think the prospect is better off working with you than your competitor, you need to quit.
Exactly.
Get
Completely.
out. Like, get the heck. You can't, because otherwise you're living every day duplicitous. Like, you're not a person of integrity. How are you going to prospect and push hard for meetings or get them to change direction if you don't really think that you have the right solution? You got to get out of there. Like,
Exactly.
you can't fake that. So,
I love what you're saying there because it really comes back to really understanding your customer at a deep, deep level and having the mindset to stay in the game. We only got about 6 or 7 minutes left here. Share with the audience what would be some strategies as to how they could develop both that, understanding who their ideal customer profile is, and two, getting that right mindset.
I'll give you two simple thoughts on that. I love that question. Um, and I say this, I'm not a strategist and I'm not a marketer. And I've learned over the years to stick to my knitting, and you and Mark,
Greatest
sometimes you get
lesson.
in tight with a client and they start asking your opinions on a lot of other things.
Mhm.
And I always go back and go, I appreciate you asking me. That's not my bullseye, right? Like I'm not sure you want me answering that question. Like, so I don't do strategy. I'm not that smart. I don't do marketing, except to the extent that what I care deeply about as a sales hunter and a sales hunter coach is that my people are spending their time chasing the right accounts. And that's why that's the first step. So if you ask me, how do you do that? The best exercise in the world is doing a legitimate analysis of your best customers. And I don't just mean your best by like your biggest. I mean the best by the ones who love you the most, who are the most sticky, who truly get your value proposition, the ones who are raving fans. And what I always tell salespeople, if you get help from marketing and leadership in your company, that's great. But if you got to do this on your own, you have got to figure out who are, the phrase that gets tossed around a lot in the industry is the ICP, right? The ideal customer profile. I call them ideal profile prospects. Some people call them the avatar. Whatever you want to call it is figure it out. Who are the best looking, fitting, smelling customers you've got? And you develop this profile, and then we're looking for lookalikes for those. And once you have that, then you can really shape your messaging because it's what are the problems you solve. And I just did this last week in an exercise with a client in an exercise. I had the salespeople go talk to their 3 favorite clients, the ones who think that you hung the moon. And I said, go ask them, why did you come to us in the first place? Go back to your customers that love you and ask them, what were you dealing with when you join us? And why have you stayed with us? And what problems have we solved? And how have we improved your business and your life and your role? And I said, they're going to tell you stuff that is more compelling and more powerful than anything we can make up on our own. And probably definitely more than the garbage that's in your marketing material. If we could do those two things to get started, to per the question you asked, is nail down the ideal profile of who we're really trying to target. And then understanding that we built that profile based on the value we brought to this subset of customers. And we understand what problems we're really solving, what outcomes we're achieving, why they came to us, why they stay, why they're willing to pay our premium price. And they didn't make a commodity decision. If we could capture that language, we're so far down the path to being brilliant consultative sales hunters that are not scared to prospect, because we know who to go after, and we know what to say. Plus, the other benefit of that exercise, you feel great when you do it. You know how powerful it is when your best customers are telling you why they freaking love you and how you've saved them. You go take on the world. I'll go, give me the phone, man. Like, I'll get meetings. Because I'm calling you. Hey, you're not going to believe how we're helping these other people. That we solved problem A, we got them over hump B, we're achieving result C. Let's get together. I'm going to help you. Like, and the prospects can feel that on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's a different energy coming off of you.
Yeah. Even now, like, you can even sense my energy as Mark
Yes.
asked me that question, like, because that's who I am as a salesperson. It just kicks in, and I want to go do it.
See, this is how it changes your mindset, because you're
Yes.
so in love with who you know you can help and how you're going to help them. I mean, the
And the
two really
energy
build off each other.
Mark, you're the one that said this. This is a mind for sales.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I
This
think that's the
it's a
book.
lifestyle. You just, that is what you were saying in the book.
Yeah. You did write the foreword for it, so thank you.
It was a great book. After the forward.
Anyway, no, after the foreword, that was the best part. So
Yeah,
nobody.
this is fun, man.
Fast forward. Hey, just a couple minutes left. What's one tip you would tell people, salespeople, to help them make the back half of the year?
Why don't you take back your calendar? And I'm just going to repeat something. And forgive me for those of you that follow me. You know what I'm going to say. There's only 3 verbs in sales: create, advance, and close. And I can't tell you the percent of salespeople's calendar I see spent doing anything but creating new opportunities at the top of the pipeline, or advancing, or closing. So the number one thing, if we're going to make our numbers, particularly in this uncertain economy, and I'll come back to my uncertain economy and protecting our hearts and our minds in tariff crazy land that we're in right now. But you got to spend more time selling, period. Like that is the number one fix. That goes along with getting really strategic about who you target and sharpen your messaging, as we've talked about at length in this meeting today. If you do those 3 things, you will win. But I can't not address the topic that we just kind of naturally came up with here. It's a mess, right? Everyone is frustrated about something. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on politically. Control. My friend Bradley Hartman. I don't have the mug here. I love Bradley Hartman in our industry. I've got a mug for him that says, "Control what you can control." What are you paying attention to? And this is a really good time when business is hard and there's government chaos and the news changes and it's mercurial. And one day our stocks are up 5% and one day they're down 5%. I don't want to look at that. Like, what can you do? You can take back your calendar. You can sharpen your story. You can pursue your accounts. You could bring a light of positivity to your prospects and to your clients. You can control all of that. So I would just remind salespeople, turn off the news at times and focus on what matters and go bring value to the marketplace. You will be handsomely rewarded for that. Mike Weinberg.